all those overs that you bowled, which is roughly the equivalent of about 3,500 six-ball overs, you must have been pretty injury-free.
Yeah, I only really had early 90s. I tried to make a comeback at Sunshine, and a guy from Essendon, I think it was Davenport, he was a younger guy, and he was a fitness fanatic, and I wasn't a great runner. I'd never liked running, Lee. I'd put a ball in front of me, I'd chase it, and I was always fit, but I always figured I had 5 steps and bowl. And he had us doing all this work, and on the Thursday night before the first game, I did my Achilles. And I was out for 16 weeks, I think. Oh, wow. And I came back, played a game at Melton in the seconds. I was in my 14th over, and I did it again. And that was the end of the season. But that really was the only problem I've ever had in my injury.
Quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Now, after you left Preston, you went to Broadmeadows, which was then a formative club, and you were captain coach there for a couple of years. And I played with you there because I was working over that side of town for one of those 2 years. You developed some fantastic players, introduced them into the club, Forder, Ash and Russell Guy, just to name a couple who went on to become legendary players in sub-district. Yeah. That must have been tough times for Broadmeadows in those formative years, because there wasn't a club before it formed, was there, really?
No, Broadmeadows was a dot on a map that the subbies selected, and they played in the Metropolitan League for 1 year, and Tommy Rowan, who you well know, was their first captain. I left Preston, I was at Mont Albert for 2 years, and that was Eastern Suburbs cricket. And in the second year I was there, they played their first, they were brought into the sub-districts after the 1 year in the Metropolitan League, and didn't win a game, I don't think. They were just a chopping block. But they advertised, and I went to a training, and I wanted to get out of the east. I was living in the north, so I applied for the job, and I got a job as assistant coach that year under Max McPherson was captain, and we won 3 games that year, which was great part to be part of. We won 3 in a row. I was very lucky to play in that. I look back and one of my favourite times. And then the next 2 years I took over as coach, and the year you came, the 4th year I was there, was not a very good year, and I was spent. And you talk about the strength you have out of being with clubs with 100-year histories. Broadmeadows was 4 years old, and mentally I was spent. Yes. I was exhausted, and I had a bit of a breakdown actually, which is why I stopped playing. But when I look back at the year, I think I played 7 games that year, and no wickets. The only year ever I never took a wicket. Right. But I was exhausted. But that year was not good again, because I realised where I was, and I talked the club into advertising, and we actually interviewed and appointed Rodney Hines, the ex-Carlton guy. And the week before the first game, he took a job at Ivanhoe. And the committee said, you've got the job, and I didn't want it. So it got off on a wrong foot. I had you over there, and I feel sorry for what happened, but it was a pretty ordinary year. But that was it. I needed a rest. So I had a couple of years off then playing local. Yeah.
You played a lot of cricket in the eastern suburbs and also in the EBK?
EBKCA, yeah, it's always north.
Yeah.
The EBKCA became the Northwest Cricket, became, the VTCA. A lot of the clubs moved to the VTCA, but they still are today a merger of the Northern Leagues and the Moonee Valley. Yep. So it's the Northwest Metropolitan Cricket Association, and I had over 20 years off and on. It became the place for juniors. It's a very strong junior competition, and I managed to look after teams for 27 years, junior sides, and all my boys came through that. Yep. And getting a little bit ahead of myself, but when I came back into the subbies in the 80s, it was a pie and a Big M at lunchtime on the way to the ground after doing the kids in the morning, but great fun.
Yeah. Now you came back to Preston 81, 82 as coach.
As coach.
Yeah. How did that come about?
Well, Preston advertised, and at the time I was working for Royal Insurance, and we had an office here on the corner of Kramer and High Street. So I applied for transfer and I got it. So I was over there living in the north, and I thought, wouldn't mind this. So I applied and went to an interview with Peter Jones and Steve Hillam and Graham Pinchbeck. And one thing led to another, and I emphasised that I really wanted to coach, but I wanted to play. I didn't want to captain. I only had a couple of years off from the Broadmeadows years. I had the kids in the morning, and I really just wanted to play, but I wanted to benefit. I wanted to push my coaching career. So I got the job under that, and it was a great year. I enjoyed the year, but it's also a very tough year, and I wouldn't mind perhaps spending a couple of minutes on that as to why. Yeah, it was great to reacquaint with Preston, and I love my Preston days. They were formative years. Got good mates here. We grew up together in that period. And that particular year of 81-2, arguably I had my best year as a player, which you say, why aren't you here at the end of the year? But there was things that didn't quite fit, and it was all to do with the coaching side of it. When you coach, I tried to look at the broader needs of the club as distinct from being a captain and your immediate needs. And I always thought Preston, and I think it's true today, that we had a first 11 here and a second 11 that you could alternate and hardly lose anything, but we lacked stars. So I looked to a bit of youth. Peter Jones was very helpful. I said to him, what have you got in the he was looking after the under-16s, and we found Jerry Dowling and Paul Rosonico. Right. And within two games, they were both in the first. Jerry stayed the year and went on to play for the state. Class. Yeah, he did. And Paul Rosonico never finished the year, unfortunately, but fortunately for him, he was picked up by Collingwood Football Club and went and did a pre-season there. So, the Harvey boys, they were just coming on, and Jeff King, these kids, but they couldn't really get a breakthrough in the seconds. I said nothing against, and I understand all this, but I thought the club needed to invest in a little bit more in its youth.
So after your year coaching, 81-82, you went back out to the EBK.
Yep.
And played for a long time out there. I think are you a life member out there?
Yeah, a member of the Reading Black Club, which is 20 years since, but I only went back to the local comp for 1 year. I went back to play with for my brother, who was coaching Moomba Park. And while I was there, you look at your insurance duties, but I used to look after Jack Collins' sports store, and Barry Watson worked for him, and I knew these guys well, and Barry rings me up and he says, what about coming over to Sunshine? I had a very young family at the time, Lee, and I was happy to play locally, but I thought, why not, one more? So I joined Sunshine, and that was just an absolute brilliant year. I went back as a player, had a pretty good year. We won a flag, and what else can I say? I'd had enough. I was in the paper there as a 35-year-old veteran, and I thought, hang on, I'm not that old.
God, I wish I could remember being 35 now, Don.
I know.
Tremendous. Now, in the EBK, you had something remarkable happen. You played with your sons. Your dad was an umpire. You played with your brother and a couple of nephews. Did you have one complete team, or it was spread over a couple of teams?
On this particular day, we were playing for Greenvale. I lived in Greenvale, and my son Rick and my second son David got into music, and music took off in this period. So Rick dropped his cricket a little bit, but decided to play locally, and he had a game at Greenvale, which is now the Greenvale Kangaroos. And I was up there for 9 years, and I became vice president up there and chairman of selectors, and Rick was made captain. And on this particular day, because it was a fairly new club at that time, we had Rick, we had myself, my brother Graham, we had my nephew Matthew, who had played a couple of years at South Melbourne, and he rang in his dad, who was Robert, and on this particular day we played Oak Park, and Dad was the umpire. So Rick made 100 this day, and we look back and we think, that was a pretty special day.
It certainly was. It certainly was. Now, you also found yourself back at Coburg, and a very successful association back at Coburg. When did you go back there?
Well, Coburg's always been a love-hate relationship. Hate probably a little bit hard, but I was born and bred Coburg. Coburg was the family club. My brother played there. My dad was manager and looked after juniors and premiership coach down there as well. And they were writing. I'd just done a history on the Carlton Baseball Club and run a function, and Coburg contacted me through Billy Tucknott and said, we've got our 150th coming up. Would you like to write the history? So that took me about 18 months to do that, and we put that together. So that got me back into the fore there, and that all went well. We had the 150th at the MCG. What a fabulous night that was, and reacquainted with people from all areas. Something Preston has to do, has to have a big function. But anyway, so that came and went, and 2009 I get a phone call. Would you like to come down and have a chat about looking after our Hatch Shield team? So I come down to the Moreland Hotel, and all the hierarchies there, who I knew, and some of the questions I thought were a bit strange. And then they said, "Look, we've got to come clean. We're not here to talk about Hatch. We want you to coach the club." Oh, okay. And I said, "Well, I can't play. I can only do it in a non-playing role." I said, "Yeah, we understand that." But he said, "We've got Mick Lewis down there who had played a year as a player, and Mick didn't want to coach, so they wanted a coach. Mick didn't even want a captain." So one thing led to another. We had a series of meetings, and I met Mick, and I said to Mick, "I'm happy to come and do it. I'd love to do it, but you've got to be captain, because one reason, people look up to you." So long story short, I found Mick fantastic to work with. Such a level-headed, can you say he's a maniac? You know, he's got this reputation of a mad fast bowler, but Mick, honestly, is the most down-to-earth person, the most basic person, but he understood everything that I wanted to do, as in statistics, KPIs, and things that I always had done in my local cricket for my son Rick as captain. And I was able to now sit and watch other players and bring that on. And Mick loved it, to be frank. So I ended up as coach at Coburg, and well, what can I say? We're the only team at Coburg in 160 years that won the championship.
Wow.
Fantastic year.
Yes. So the statue of you and Mickey at the front of the Coburg ground, I guess?
No, not really. But I've got nothing but praise for what Mick done, and there's a couple of stories I'd love to share with everyone on that. But he could smell blood in the water. He's a typical fast bowler. Never overworked himself from a playing point, because he had hamstring problems. But a great manager of the team, great manager on the field of slow bowling, and when there was blood in the water, Mick would take the ball and just see those stumps cartwheel time and again. His management was fantastic.
Unbelievable. Now, you finished up, you were president.
Yeah, so I left after that. I figured there's nothing else I could do for Coburg after this. And I had kids and wanted to do things, and I was trying to get out of work, and it was a very difficult last couple of years in the insurance industry for me, trying to hand over and get out. And I get a call, would you like to be president? So I got into that. I got into that at a pretty tough time when Premier Cricket was just pushing the women's game, and my years at Coburg would be remembered for the battles going on with the loss of funding to sub-district clubs and the rise of the women's game. And I look back at those 3 years pretty fondly to be exposed to that. It's just another set of armoury that you take away and say, well, you went through it and you did it. But yeah, really good time.
Yeah.
But again, after 3 years, 70 years old, there's things that I wanted to do. There's more travelling that I wanted to do, and COVID hit, so
Yes.
we're all doing nothing.
Right. And how's the form at the moment in the over 60 comp?
Yeah, I played a couple of games before Christmas, and I got hit on the wrist fielding, and I've had a bit of trouble with my nerves in and around the hand here, so I haven't played since Christmas. But all the scans come up all right. It's just bruising, so next summer.
Yes, yeah. And what do you do with yourself now? You're retired. So what keeps you going?
Well, music's always been I'm not a musician, but I've always been a collector of music, rock and roll music. Elvis Presley and all these co-foes, Haley, Richard, Cochrane, Vincent, Ricky Nelson. My eldest son Rick's named after Ricky Nelson.
Right.
And I've always been members of clubs and that, and for the last 5 or so years I've been writing publications, and that's where I spend my time researching and writing.
Right.
It's a passion of mine, and as I said, all my boys are musicians, and Rick's putting on a show as a tribute to Rick Nelson next May the 8th, which is Rick's birthday, and we're going to come along and see how all that goes.
Fantastic. They're not going to get you up to sing or anything like
that?
that?
No, I don't sing.
No? Looking back, Don, it's been a remarkable career, and your association with Preston probably totals half a dozen years or whatever, but you've always, in your heart, been a Preston man. I've known you for all of that time because we came across each other in business, and you've always been a Preston man deep down.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll always be grateful for Preston for the opportunity. I loved my Preston years of all premierships, anywhere, playing anywhere, with any group. The Preston years were the best. They're just special.
Yes, yes. And you were down at the first 1860 function. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, it was great, Lee. I think you're doing a fantastic job with this. Whosever idea it was to get it up and running. I've been at Sean Harrison because we were presidents together, and I said, when are you going to run a function? You know, because you haven't run any. I want to come back and be part of it. And of course, the 1860 took over, and it's been really good.
Yeah. We also should mention that your brother Graham played here. We forgot to mention that early, but Graham was a very capable bat.
Yep.
Played in the ones in the early 70s.
Yes.
What was the age difference between you?
Yeah, 6 years. In fact, Graham's probably the source of why I ended up getting to Preston. Graham was a child champion, and cricket and baseball. Played for Victoria baseball. Cricket, he was unbelievable swing bowler. And he used to take figures of 5s, 7s, 9s for not many runs. They used to play on turf in the mornings up to about the under 14s. He played for Coburg. And when I was getting mucked around with my firsts and seconds, I said to the club, look, if you get Graham into the thirds and give me a game in the first, we'll stay. And long story short, the day I was picked in the seconds, he was picked in the fourths. So we both left. And Graham arrived here at the ripe old age, he wasn't quite 14. And in his first year, he took 35 wickets, playing with Keith Rattraywood and these guys, Stevie Hillam and that, in that era. And by the time he was 14 and a half, he hurt his back. So he had to reinvent himself. He never bowled again, really. He played a few games, but couldn't do it. But he was a beautiful swing bowler, and he could really move the ball both ways. But by the time we left, and one of the reasons we left, I'll say it again, was the 8 one-day games. Yes. In that season, with Dick and Dick Johnson running it, Dion Johnson running it, Graham and I never played a game together, but we were getting played off against each other. I'd play the 2 days, and he would play the 1 day. So the only sour part of leaving Preston was the fact that I was 24 and he was 18. How much cricket could we have played at Preston? But it's the rules of the day, and it was the time of the day.
That's right. And Jeffrey and Ruttenfells were...
and no restrictions on bowlers. And like Eddie was a fantastic bowler. I love playing with Eddie. And Eddie, I've got to throw in, I put him on as one of my favourite all-rounders. He was a really good bat in the early days. Continuously go out there and make 50 runs.
Yes.
But Eddie was a great guy, great bowler. We had some great times.
Together. Well, great times. I've had some great times with you too, Don. And I want to thank you very much for your time this morning back here at Kramer Street. It's been a mixed morning with competition from the lawnmower, a bit of rain early doors and varying light, but we've sort of made it. But you've had a remarkable career, and to go for 60 years, the mind boggles as to how you've actually done it. Across so many different sort of entities, and you've made your mark in so many different places. So congratulations on your career. We hope to see a lot of you at Preston over the next 4 to 5, 7 to 8, 10 years.
Thanks again, Lee. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.